Welcome back, everybody, to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh. And as all of you by now know, the Pittsburgh Steelers 2019 season is officially over. It was one hell of a roller coaster. I think at one point, if you would have asked people if they were going to get better than 4-12, considering everything that had gone on early in the season, you probably wouldn't have thought so. And then we were sitting there at 8-5, staring the postseason in the face, and lost 3 straight. But tonight will be just a brief review of course, the loss in Baltimore, which I know many of you have heard, but you'll get a little bit of our different perspective on it. And then also start discussing some of the offseason stuff, a little bit of explanation about the salary cap and just where the Steelers are and why it's really hard to kind of nail it down right now, and especially with CBA stuff coming up over the next year or so. Joining me tonight are Ian and Ben, and Ian, of course, coming from the Steel City. Ian, how are you this fine Wednesday evening?
Doing great. Happy to be back. Season's over, unfortunately, but it's good to be back on the podcast and looking forward to a fun offseason. We're going to have a lot to discuss, even though we don't have a first-round pick in the draft.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Somebody asked me today in the store, and well, what are you guys going to do? You guys going to draft a quarterback? And I'm like, man, we have a second round pick, no first, no third. We ain't drafting a quarterback at all. But again, I never say never because you just never know. But and also with us tonight is Mr. Ben Anderson. And Ben, are you chomping on some pretzels again tonight?
I was.
Oh yeah.
I all things considered, I'd really still rather have Minkah than that first round pick. I
agree.
I have no regrets, no criticisms, no anger, no resentment, no nothing. And if you do not understand the impact that players make on the field. And there's no way the Steelers would have gotten that kind of an impact from a first rounder this year at number 18 that they got out of an all-pro free safety that basically solidified their entire defensive backfield.
Absolutely. And you nailed it when you said all-pro. He is an all-pro, along with Watt and Cam Hayward. And all-pro safeties don't grow on trees. That trade was more than worth it. I'm glad to give that first rounder up because, as you said, you are not going to find a rookie that can come in and give you that kind of production. Let's go back to Week 17. The Steelers went into that game against Baltimore knowing they had to win, and then, of course, had to have the Tennessee Titans lose. And congratulations to the Titans, by the way, for at least for this year, helping us avoid Tom Brady and the Patriots and yet another Super Bowl. So thank you, Tennessee. But what was it, Ian, I'll start with you. What was it about that loss to Baltimore that really kind of bothered you? Because I know it did me.
Other than like everything.
Fair answer.
The offense was listless other than one drive. The defense, you knew they were going to run the ball. They were starting a backup quarterback and essentially, took all their good players out of the game, and the weather was disgustingly awful. There was no, it was windy, it was rainy, it was no kind of weather to throw the ball, and you knew they were going to run, and we still let them run all over us. Some of that's the players on the field, some of that's the game planning, some of that's, what adjustments you make in game that, we even without Lamar Jackson in the game, we still couldn't stop their offense. And, regardless of how good or bad Duck played, we still only put up 10 points offensively, which made 3 straight games in a row that we put up 10 points, and that's not a winning formula in the NFL. But I think the thing that sticks with you is just getting run over. That was something that the Steelers team hadn't done really in a long time. Even when their pass defense was terrible, their run defense was still decent. And just seeing a team gash you like that, and especially it being the Ravens, there was years where the Ravens went 5-11 or 6-10, but they still showed out for games against the Steelers, and there was just the team just didn't seem to have that spark for whatever reason. There was no emotion really that they were showing in the game, which for a game where you still have a chance to make the playoffs was kind of unfortunate to see.
It was almost as if they had already heard that Tennessee had beaten Houston, even though the two games were going on simultaneously. That's what the look had to me. But Ben, I know you wanted to address a couple of things.
There's a whole lot more
to
that, in my opinion. And basically what it comes down to, in my opinion, again, is lack of focus by the players. It was like they had decided it was over, and it didn't matter. I mean, there was a long shot that they were going to get in, but I think as soon as they heard that Hopkins and Deshaun Watson weren't playing, they were like, okay, well, we're not going to the playoffs, so we'll just mail this one in. But yeah, it's embarrassing. I guess their rival, the Ravens, only averaged 4.5 yards a play in that game.
It's incredible.
I don't know if anybody realizes that. That's not a real high figure. 4.5 yards a play in today's NFL is nothing.
No.
But they ran 68 plays, and they held the ball for 39 minutes. The defense could not get off the field. The offense, no focus there. Couldn't do a damn thing. The offensive line, again, looked terrible. I cannot stand B.J. Finney at guard. Tell him he's never playing there again. Move him to, at center.
At center, yeah.
I cannot stand him at center. Put him at guard. Leave him there forever. Tell him he's never playing center and draft another one. It was terrible. It was awful. The lack of focus, the lack of continuity, all three phases. It was terrible. And blame it on whoever you want, but I blame that on team leadership. I mean, Bud said that the Ravens kept flashing the score of the Texans and Titans game up on their Jumbotron to try and distract the Steelers. Whatever, man.
Yeah.
Great. They're trying to distract you. Guess what? It worked. You guys came out listless. You played like crap, and now you're trying to make excuses about that? Come on, man. That's ridiculous. And my understanding, not right after the game, a couple days later, what I was told was that Tomlin, after the game, he addressed the team and told them that in no uncertain terms, he was not happy with the lack of focus in that game.
Right.
And to make sure that before they cleaned out lockers, they said goodbye and shook hands with everybody because the team was not going to look the same next year. Now, Tomlin says a lot of things. Okay. He says whatever he feels like he needs to say to motivate the team. And, that what he said may be more extreme than what actually takes place. But he was not happy. And if you watched his post-game press conference, not the one on Tuesday, but the one right after the game, it was obvious he was pissed. And I didn't realize how pissed off he was. But it sounds as though he just thought it was pathetic. And, yeah, I got to agree with him. It was humiliating. It was not fun to watch.
Well, he doesn't normally make those types of comments. If he does, it's in a more guarded environment. But you're absolutely right. The fact that he made those types of comments was kind of alarming, and it was very telling of the way he felt about the performance. And it's funny to me because you bump into people and it's like, oh, you guys should win. They're not playing any of their stars, and it's like that's not how it works with this rivalry. Baltimore is still going to come ready to play. And I expect that we come ready to play. And as both of you kind of alluded to, that's what was disappointing. Well, that's what was disappointing. I can handle losing. Losing is part of life, but to get run over to the tune of 200 plus yards rushing. It was embarrassing.
The first game, the defense came out and they sacked Lamar Jackson 5 times and forced him into 3 picks. They absolutely played lights out the first game. Unfortunately, the offense didn't, so the Steelers still lost. This time, it was just like they were just going through the motions, man. I don't know if you guys saw what I saw, but especially when I rewatched the game after the fact and then went through the film, I was like, what are you guys – there's no intensity, nothing. It's just like you're just there to collect a check today.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the way I felt about watching it, and it was such a bitter ending because so many of us did not anticipate even having that opportunity way back when we were 1-4. Ben's out for the year. I mean, and we did. We had the chance. We had that opportunity to win a couple games at the end and get a little help and get in the playoffs. And I had no expectation that if we got in the playoffs, we'd be able to do anything. But I think it would have been a tremendous accomplishment for this team. And it was just a real sour way to end it. But
when they were 1-3, I think we had a discussion and we wondered how far they could go, and we said that if they got to 8-8, it would be a big accomplishment. I'm going to backtrack on that. And basically, I mean, I'm going to straight up tell you, when they were 8-5, I was surprised, but I was happy.
Sure,
I knew that they had 2 winnable games in front of them, and all they had to do was win 2 of the 3, and they get into the playoffs, and that would be an accomplishment. At this point, I'm giving the season on a whole a C+. I don't know about you guys.
Well, it fits the 500 record, a C+. Ian, what would you grade them as?
Yeah, I remember that podcast vividly. I was on it. I remember saying that I think my exact statement was, I'll be happy if they make it to 7-9 because losing 10 games sucks. And we've all been through that with them losing 10 plus games, and it sucks. So I'm looking back on it, I'm ecstatic on the whole. They got to 8 games, but the way the season ended with, having that chance and dropping 3 games. I mean, could we have gone into New England and done what Tennessee did? No, we did not have the same running game that they did. I mean, and a lot of that game too was, Derrick Henry just running guys over. New England had some good defensive fills on run plays, and Henry just ran guys the heck over and got more yards. And I mean, Tennessee had a great game plan defensively. They were well coached by Vrabel. He did a great job against Belichick. Even pulling some Belichick-isms against him, like running the clock on the punt with 5 minutes left.
That was beautiful.
Hilarious and awesome. But I mean, no, there's no way we could have gone in there and done that. We weren't going anywhere in the playoffs anyway. But it's still disappointing because you always want to get to the dance. You want to have a chance. So it's disappointing we weren't able to make it. But I think on the whole, I agree with Ben. The offense completely, I mean, not only backtracked, but there was points in the season, both with Rudolph and with Duck, even when he took over. That the Rams game, the second Browns game, the Cardinals game, it really looked like they were, these guys were starting to learn and starting to put things together. Both Rudolph and Duck, and the defense was playing excellent. And then I don't really know what happened offensively. They went into a shell. They outthought themselves. They really, I mean, the injuries to the running backs hurt a lot too. They really didn't have a consistent running game at all. And they couldn't run the ball against the Bills or the Jets or actually the Ravens. Benny Snell had a pretty good game. He averaged almost 5 yards or over 5 yards a carry. I think like 90 yards on 18 carries or something like that. So, but still, and when you can't run the ball and your quarterback can't throw the ball, it's not a good combination, and it leads you to putting up 10 points in 3 straight games. And there was a quote I remember. I think it was after the Buffalo game. And I think it was Joe Hayden that said it, that said, 17 points is always kind of our goal, that we want to, hold the other team to 17 or less. And, we feel like that's a chance to play winning football. And that's kind of what's always been preached to them. And I mean, they held the Bills to 17 and the Jets to 16. And at that point, in the National Football League, you have a chance to win those games, but the offense didn't come through. The offense scored 1 touchdown in each of the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? In each of the last 7 of the last 8 games, they scored 1 touchdown. Yeah.
Which is just a huge credit to the defense. Of course, they had the special teams score from Deontay Johnson.
Right.
But it is what it is. The season is over for the Steelers, and again, I know a lot of fans were expecting significant changes and everything else, and the Steelers just don't operate that way. The way that you see other teams making one move after another, I still expect you're going to see a few things happen. But those haven't come down the pike just yet, and I suspect they will. We haven't really heard the season-ending comments from Art Rooney too. Usually he makes some statements, as does Kevin Colbert. So we'll see. But the one thing I do want to mention is as we proceed into the off season is let you guys, because you understand it way better than I do. The salary cap stuff as far as the Steelers. And we had a good chuckle here before we turned on the recording. That the salary cap is supposed to go up $11 or $12 million, but that doesn't mean you just add $11 or $12 million to your salary cap. So, Ben, where exactly are the Steelers in regards to the cap right now, and what are those ramifications as we head into this whole CBA negotiation stuff too?
Well,
and I know it's not an easy thing to discuss.
Yeah, it's a complicated question, okay, because right now the cap is projected to come in at $200 million, but the cap has missed those projections and come up short the last 3 years. So I'm not counting on that being the case, okay? Right now they have their top 51. They have $195 million, 921, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. So they basically have about $4 million in space, okay? But they have another $3 million they can roll over from this year to next. So call that, I don't know, $7 million.
Sure.
But then they've got their own, and we should get into more detail about this later, but they've got their own restricted free agents. They've got a tender. And those tenders and a couple of those guys are going to run like $3 million. So that's $6 million right there for Mike Hilton and Matt Filer, for example. That's going to get eaten into that $7. So basically right now, what I'm getting at, long story short, is their liabilities exceed their available cap space. Now, today, they have, in my opinion, what amounts to zero effective cap space going into the offseason. Now, there are some guys that can cut.
Yep.
But we don't know which guys they're going to cut, and that becomes a more complicated question because if they don't keep Bud Dupree, they may have to keep Anthony Chickillo. On top of that, we don't know where the cap is actually going to fall. Let's say it comes in at $198 million as opposed to $200 million. Well, not only do you not get to add that $11 million that's gone up, you have to deduct another $2 million from what you were expecting. So now you actually have $5 million, and you still have more liabilities than that.
Yep.
So it's a mess.
Oh, definitely.
Okay. It's a mess. And on top of that, there is a rule in the last year of the CBA that has to do with restructures of contracts in general, because they don't want teams kicking too much space out into the uncapped wilderness beyond the CBA.
Right.
So they're not going to let them push too much of that cash out there. Typically, the way that contracts are structured is you get a massive signing bonus and you get like a minimum salary year one to keep that cap hit low.
Yep.
Well, there's a 30% rule now, which basically says you cannot make the year one salary on any new or restructured deal any less than 70% of the year two salary. Okay. So if you already have an existing contract and you've got, and I should point out, it's not just salary, it's salary and bonuses. So if you have a roster bonus, workout bonuses, all of that, it all gets rolled into that. It's total compensation for that year. So let's just say Ben Roethlisberger, that's a good example right there. Okay. Let's go over his real quickly because it should just take a second. Ben makes in 2020, he will make a total of $21 million. Okay. So you would think that he'd be a good candidate for a restructure. And in a normal year, he would be. You tack on a couple of fake years to the end of his deal.
Right.
And you turn all that into a signing bonus, get him down to like $1 million, and boom, you created a bunch of space. But you can't because his total compensation in year 2021 is 16.5. So you could theoretically restructure Ben a little bit, but looking at it, you're going to be able to carve out tops $2-3 million in space on Ben's. When in a normal year, you'd probably be able to carve out like 8 or 9. And that's the challenge the Steelers are going to be up against this year when they're restructuring contracts. And most of them are more prohibitive than that. You just can't carve out that much space because it's the last year of a CBA. And the thing that they're trying to do here, the reason they wrote it in was it's to motivate not only the NFL to get to the table and negotiate the CBA, but also the players union.
Definitely.
Because when there's less cash flowing around like that, there's less to be spent on players. And there are smaller contracts or smaller guarantees as a result. Okay. And that's what it's all about
for the players too.
Yeah, it's less money for the players, less guaranteed money for the players.
And I believe they got another memo yesterday or within the last few days, just reminding them you better be saving up your money in case of a work stoppage.
They've been reminding them for 5 years, and hopefully
they have. And
hopefully
I saw
no one paid attention, and they're going to need cash. But
former Raider and Steeler Nolan Harrison, I saw had tweeted, he got a hold of a copy of it and tweeted it out there. And it's a real thing for those guys. And most of them probably don't pay much attention to it. And that's where the owners hope that they're not, so that they need the cash. But, again, we could go into this forever and ever and ever, but, Ian, who I know Ben mentioned Chicolo, but who are some other potential guys that could be cut that would result in potential cap savings here for the Steelers?
Yeah. So, like Ben said, the restructures are kind of tough right now.
Yeah.
And really, the Steelers typically when they sign free agents do kind of backload the contract a little bit as much as they can. So, guys like a Mark Barron would save about $5 million. A Steven Nelson, which you're absolutely not going to cut, but would save $5 million potentially, or almost $6 million actually, but they're not going to cut Nelson. But just so, people and listeners are aware, Nelson played absolutely fantastic this year, but he comes with about a $11 million cap hit next year, which is what you pay a number one cornerback. And Joe Hayden's also going to have about a $12 million cap hit next year. So we have, there was a lot of talk this year about how we had two of the best cornerback tandem in the league, which is true. And they're getting paid like it too. We're not saving any money there. They're getting paid what they deserve for as well as they're playing. But Mark Barron, there's been a lot of talk about Vance McDonald. They could save about $5.5 million there, but that also, really short strings them and leaves them without a tight end because Nick Vannett, who they traded a 5th-round pick for, is going to be a free agent. So that leaves you just with Zach Gentry, essentially nothing, as your only tight end on the roster. Vance has a relatively reasonable cap hit at $7 million for what number one tight ends make. The unfortunate thing with him is just that, he can't be healthy and can't stay on the field. But given what Jesse James got for a number 2 tight end contract last year, you're not going to get a tight end on the free agent market for a better deal than what we have Vance for right now. So even though there's some savings there, I don't see that one happening. Anthony Chicolo is another $5 million potential savings. Ramon Foster is a $4 million potential savings, but Finney's going to be a free agent too. So they're, if they cut Foster, which is possible, they still have to kind of take that money and use it to sign Finney probably, or sign another guard on the free agent market, which, top end guards aren't cheap either. So, and like you said, we don't have a 1st-round pick. We don't have a 3rd-round pick. We'll have our 2nd-round pick, and then all projections point to us getting a 3rd-round compensatory pick for Le'Veon Bell leaving. But still, that's what, two picks possibly in the top 100. Our first pick will probably be around number 50 overall. So one pick in the top 50 and maybe 2 picks in the top 100. There's not a lot of draft capital there either. So they're really going to have to go out and kind of look for guys sort of maybe willing to take 1 year, prove it, veteran minimum type deals just because of how tight they are up against the cap this year. And Ben pointed out with Bud Dupree's situation and how that impacts Chicolo, the outside linebackers. There's a lot of moving pieces in place here. There's a couple smaller number guys. Jordan Berry could save us almost $2 million. He absolutely has to go. Daniel McCullers could save us 1.5. So
I don't think he's getting cut, man. I really don't.
You think they're going to keep JB?
I do. I wish they'd cut him.
I
wish they would cut him.
I was with you until they brought in a guy this week already to work out. Then
I get it, but you know what happens, man. And I hate to get off on a tangent here, and I agree. He's not worth $1.8 million. I would cut him if it was my decision. But what happens is they bring a guy in and have him compete with Barry when the weather's good. Okay.
Yeah.
And it seems like when he has his gaffes, it's in December and January, and when you need to really count on a punter, that's when he screws up. And I just think when he's punting against a guy in August in Latrobe, he's money, and the guy stands no chance.
No.
And on top of that, he's a reliable holder. So,
and that is often forgotten in all of that.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't know, man. I don't have much hope. I'm sure they'll bring somebody in again.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
To appease all of us, and Steelers Nation will, they'll hope and pray that Barry gets cut, and he won't, and then they'll all be pissed. And then when he shanks a punt in a pivotal game at home when it's 28 degrees out, we'll have this conversation again.
Not only shanking a punt, but fumbling a snap and misreading the cues,
the fake. That was a
too.
Problem. I just want to cover one thing. I want to expand upon the point that Ian was making about Vance McDonald. I agree with him. I don't see McDonald getting cut, and here's why. Right now, McDonald is the 21st highest paid starting tight end in the NFL. That number, or that ranking rather, is going to go down the first couple of weeks of free agency. It just always does. They could threaten him by telling him that they're going to cut him if he doesn't take a pay cut, for example.
Right.
But he's going to have his agent rather is going to have a pretty good sense of confidence that if he goes out on the open market, he is going to make what he's making now or a little more, because he's talented. He just can't stay healthy. That's the issue with him. They're going to point to the fact that he played with practice squad quarterback for half the season and another young quarterback who had his head up his ass and couldn't see open receivers. And I'm speaking to Mason Rudolph right now.
Yep.
So, I mean, they're going to point all that out. They're going to go, look, the guy was in a position to make a difference. They just didn't give him the damn ball. You know that. And, he'll make $5 or $6 million a year someplace else. So the Steelers don't really have a lot of leverage there.
No, I agree.
In order to try and get him to take a pay cut. It's either going to be an outright cut or not. And they have an option on his contract this year. And we should talk about that real quickly, because basically that is a mechanism the Steelers do not use at all. The last 2 years of McDonald's contract are option years. And they are in there so that the team can effectively say, yeah, we're going to let you go become a free agent so that they can get a comp pick next year. Okay? Which would probably amount to a 6th or 7th round pick next season. Not this year, but next season. Okay?
And that came over with him from San Francisco.
From San Francisco, that's correct. When they traded for him, they took on the contract. That's the way it works. They have to affirmatively exercise the option or decline it before the first day of the league year. If they exercise his option, it guarantees him no money, none. But the way they do business is such that if they exercise that option, they're not going to cut him, at least not before camp.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, when you see that happen, and this is the reason I'm explaining all this, when you see that happen one way or the other, if they exercise it, he's not taking a pay cut, they're not cutting him. It isn't going to happen. If something goes wrong in camp or he doesn't perform, they can cut him and know nothing, which is fine. And that's probably what I honestly expect to happen, is that they will exercise his option. He'll perform in camp and he'll be on the team again next year, because they really don't have anything back there.
No.
What I'd like to see happen is Nick Vannett get re-signed, but I don't know. He's not going to be that cheap. As you pointed out, what Jesse James got as a number 2 tight end last year. Yeah. I think Vanette's as capable as James, maybe more.
Right.
He just didn't get the ball this year. And I see him getting some money on the open market and maybe, potentially being a one-and-done guy, basically a 5th-round draft pick the Steelers burned last year to solidify the position and getting very little out of it.
Yeah, I mean, this offseason is really going to be fluid because there are so many of these, and I don't want to call them little, but, things like that where decisions have to be made and we're, you hate to call $1 million here, $1 million there little, but in some cases it is compared to what other guys are going to be getting,
$1 million. Think about it this way.
Can we talk about something for a second?
Yeah.
Hey, just so one quick point. $1 million is 1/2 of 1% of the salary cap.
Yeah.
Okay. Ian, go.
Okay. Yeah. All right. On Ben's point, actually, before I make my other point, Ben's right on what $1 million is, but also on a veteran minimum contract that only a certain percentage of it counts against the cap. You could potentially sign 2 veterans or 2 rookies or 1.5 rookies for that $1 million. So that's potentially multiple players you could add to the roster for that number. Okay. My other point, though, Ben brought up the 5th-round pick we traded for Nick Vannett was essentially the 5th-round pick we got from Jacksonville in the Josh Dobbs trade.
Dobbs.
Yes.
Right. And?
Do you think the season would have gone any different if we had not made those moves? If we hadn't traded Dobbs, but also not acquired Vannett? Because, I mean, Vance missed some time, so Vannett saw some playing time. He made some catches. But
I mean, we could speculate about that all day long. I do not think Dobbs is a good quarterback. Dobbs couldn't beat out Gardner Minshew for playing time in Jacksonville, and he wasn't all that good. He couldn't surpass Nick Foles when Nick Foles basically got into the doghouse there. He couldn't surpass him either. He's been the number 3 basically most of the year.
He didn't take a snap in Jacksonville. Not one.
No. I mean, the Steelers tried to re-sign Landry Jones, when Ben went down. But Jones had already signed with the XFL.
That's right. Dobbs to me is the classic case of a guy that he's such a good young man that fans fall in love with that aspect of it and forget that you actually have to evaluate a guy based on what he can do on the field. And, they saw him, run, scramble a little bit, make some first downs with his feet. They see him throw a strike, for a first down, and then they fall in love with him. But they forget that he's basically a one read and go quarterback. He doesn't get through his progressions well. He doesn't really throw a great ball. Again, not knocking him as a person. I'm knocking him as a player, and that's why he was traded. So no, Ian, to your question, I don't think it would have made any difference whether he was starting. I don't personally.
I don't think it probably would have made a great deal of difference. Maybe a win, maybe an extra loss. I honestly don't have any confidence that it would have dramatically enhanced the season.
That's a fair way to say it.
I didn't see a distinct difference between him and Duck in the preason. So
neither did
I agree with your points, but I thought it was worth discussing. Just because they brought up the 5th-round pick.
Oh, okay, as long as we're talking about this, since we covered this last year. I mean, basically, I decided, I don't know if you guys did or not. We discussed it. I thought you guys agreed with me that last season, 2018, that if they had Landry Jones on the roster as the backup and he had played in Oakland that day, as opposed to Josh Dobbs, that they would have gone to the playoffs last season because Dobbs absolutely stunk it up in Oakland. He was terrible. He was horrible. Yeah. And I Landry's nothing to write home about, never has been, but he at least protected the ball better than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
I think sometimes, and I hate to base it on one play, but if you guys remember the Baltimore game last year in Baltimore.
He threw one pass and it was awesome on like a 3rd and 17.
It was a brilliant strike that we were buried deep in our own territory. He comes in, he throws a beautiful pass, first down. That was a huge play in that game. And you think sometimes that fans see that one play and they become enamored with it. And well, he's capable. He can do it. Well, look, he made a great play. But that doesn't necessarily take away from a lot of the deficiencies of his game either, which we saw in the Oakland game in 2018 that Ben, that you're talking about. I fully agree with you. I think if Landry Jones is the quarterback that day, I'm not guaranteeing they win, but they got a damn better shot of it.
Yeah, I mean, they were one play away from winning that game anyway, and Dobbs was awful. He was horrible, terrible. In fact, I was subtweeting someone else about how bad Dobbs is playing. Dobbs apparently ran a search for his name on Twitter and blocked me because I tore his performance to shreds. He was awful. To your point before about fans looking at a player and becoming enamored with him, I'm going to make a point here that might piss some people off, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, what else is new?
But what fans do is they decide what they want to believe, and then they look for a reason to believe it.
Yes.
As opposed to looking at all the available information and seeing what happened. And if I could just get more people to understand that, my life would be a lot less frustrating.
Good luck.
Yeah.
As we get ready to start winding things down here, I do want to ask you, Ian, I'll start with you. Where are you, let's say, on a scale of percentages? 100% it happens, 0 it doesn't. Bud Dupree is in black and gold next year. Where are you on that?
25%. I mean, I think they want to re-sign him, but I just think that given their cap space and what they're capable of doing from a market value standpoint is going to be really, really tough. The one thing they do have going for them, I will say, is that there's going to be a lot of talented pass rushers on the market this year. Shaq Barrett, who's a guy we talked about a lot, who was just languishing in Denver for a while, on their depth chart, signed a 1-year, $4 million prove-it deal with Tampa Bay and led the league with 19.5 sacks this year. He's going to be a free agent. There's some other guys that are going to be free agents too. So there's a lot of talented pass rushers out there. So maybe Dupree doesn't get that sort of, I'll say, market setting deal. He might not be the top guy available on the market, just kind of given, his age, his past production, all that stuff. But he's still going to be able to command quite a hefty salary as well. Dante Fowler with the Rams, basically same story as Dupree, right? Drafted the same year, had his breakout year this year, first time he broke 10 sacks. Mario Addison with the Panthers also had a breakout year this year. Shaq Barrett, Dupree. So there's some good pass rushers that are going to be out there available for people to take a run at. And it's, going to depend on, there's a lot of teams out there with a lot more cap space than the Steelers and how much they're willing to spend and how many of them need pass rushers. We saw Green Bay go out and sign 2 pass rushers this year, both of the Smiths, Za'Darius and Preston, and it really transformed their defense a lot. And that defense has been carrying that team. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a shell of his former self. So, there's definitely going to be some competition on the market for pass rushers this year, but if you're a team that needs them, there's plenty out there too.
Yeah, Ben, same question. Where are you on your confidence level with Bud being a Steeler next year?
Less than 10%.
Even less.
It's money. It's about money, man. If they franchise Bud, which they will have to do if they want to keep him, basically they can scrimp and restructure and cut guys and make enough space to franchise Bud, and then they can't do anything else. You can let Matt Filer walk, you can let Finney walk, you can let Hilton walk. You can't do anything. You literally cannot do a damn thing else if you do that. So I don't see it. I don't, unless they can get Bud to accept some kind of deal in advance of free agency, then he's gone. And
that's where I'm at too.
If I'm Bud's agent, it would basically be professional malpractice for his agent to accept anything less than about $16 million a year, because he's only going to get one shot at this. One.
Yeah.
And I mean, seriously, Bud's never going to be in this position again in his
That's true.
entire
He's
career.
27. This is his prime. This is his one shot.
He is done. So his agent can either get him the big contract now or never at all. So
yeah, that's a great point.
I don't know. I just don't see it. I mean, if the Steelers try and negotiate something and Bud decides to take a little hometown discount and maybe take $15 million a year for 5 years, that's 5 years, $75 million. You know, here's the other side of it, though. Look, think about this. They're going to pay Bud $15 million a year, right?
Right.
Not this year, but next year is when TJ Watt is going to get his big contract.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys are aware of what those defenders are making now.
It's a lot of money.
Defensive player of the year type caliber guys are making $22, $23, $24 million a year. So basically, let's just say he's going to make 23. Let's split the difference. We'll put it in the middle. 23 for TJ and another 15 or 16 for Bud. That's almost $40 million for two guys.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't see it. I think
another
that Art
reason why
really
I
is going to
don't
look at it. He's just going to look at it from that standpoint. He's going to go, you know what? We just can't do it. We just can't tie up that much cash with two guys.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm right there with you. It's kind of why I feel he's going to be gone too. I put it as part of my predictions article. But guys, we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up, and we'll continue on with more salary cap stuff and free agent stuff and who stays and who goes, and obviously the draft prep is underway, and it's going to be a bit strange not having the first round pick, but again, I think we all agree that Minkah Fitzpatrick was more than worth any rookie, more than worth any rookie that would have come in. So I want to make sure we thank 26shirts.com/Pittsburgh. They got a brand new shirt out right now celebrating the Buccos, if you will, with the parrot on the shirt. And again, the shirts are great quality, very comfortable, and very cool design. So if you're a Pirates fan, go ahead and grab that and do something great at the same time. $8 from every shirt sold goes to a very worthy cause in the Pittsburgh area. So this is Steel Dad, and for Ian and Ben, I am signing off on the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast. And hey, go Steelers.
Ravens suck, but they're probably going to win anyway.